Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and stay tuned by clicking the bell icon. 6. Big Doctor Who questions raised by the shocking bi-generation twist. The Doctor Who 60th anniversary special, The Giggle, introduced a brand new concept to the hit sci-fi show, bi-generation, which generated some questions. In a first for the show, David Tennant's 14th Doctor regenerated, but instead of changing his appearance, the 15th Doctor, played by Ncuti Gatwa, split out of him. While Doctor Who is unique, with its main character being recast every few years, bi-generation has completely redefined it. The first bi-generated Doctor, Gatwa, will launch into his first full season in Doctor Who Season 14's story. The decision to introduce bi-generation in Doctor Who came from showrunner Russell T Davies, who also served as Doctor Who's showrunner from its reboot in 2005 until Tennant's departure from playing the Doctor in 2010. It makes sense that Davies brought a big change to the show, having done so in 2005, with the reveal that the Doctor's planet, Gallifrey, had been completely destroyed in the off-screen Time War. However, bi-generation is such an unusual concept, and with there now being two Doctors actively existing at the same time, it's not surprising that there are a lot of questions surrounding it. 6. Will David Tennant's 14th Doctor eventually regenerate into Ncuti Gatwa again? Even though the 14th and 15th Doctors have their individual bodies, it's worth considering that this might not be a permanent state. The end of The Giggle saw the 14th Doctor stay on Earth with his new family and Donna Noble, Catherine Tate, for a while, settling into a more family-based life. This was something the Doctor somewhat avoided in the past, always on the move and on to the next adventure. However, before 15 departed in his TARDIS, he made a point of telling 14 that they're doing rehab out of order, implying that he needed to slow down. Now that 14 is spending time on the slow path, there's a possibility that there will be a time when the Doctor has fully healed. Whether this will mean that he will then re-merge with his successor or not is unknown, but if he does, it'll be interesting to see how Davies explains this. 5. Does bi-generation mean companions in regeneration stories have been duplicated? In an episode of Doctor Who Unleashed, Russell T Davies shared his beliefs that each incarnation of the Doctor had also gone through bi-generation. Davies also said that with the bi-generation, he believed that the whole timeline bi-generated too. The only issue with this concept is that during previous regenerations, the Doctor was sometimes accompanied through their rebirth by a companion or other friend. This includes the first, William Hartnell, third, Jon Pertwee, 4th, Tom Baker, 6th, Colin Baker, 9th, Christopher Eccleston, and 11th, Matt Smith, Doctors. If each Doctor went through a bi-generation, it's worth wondering whether those who surrounded the Time Lord were also duplicated. If so, that could mean that there's another version of Rose, Billie Piper, for example, who may have never ended up in a parallel world, or Adric, Matthew Waterhouse, who never ended up losing his life to the Cybermen. 4. Is there a second Doctor who stayed with the Time Lords? The second Doctor, Patrick Troughton, went through a regeneration that was unique to other incarnations, having been forced to regenerate by the Time Lords and exiled to Earth. While this meant that the Doctor ended up forming quite an attachment to the planet and its inhabitants, if there is another bi-generated version of him, there's a chance that he ended up staying with the Time Lords. If the Time Lords were aware of bi-generation, they could have sent the new third Doctor to Earth but kept the second under their watch, perhaps fearing that the two would work together to escape exile. If this did happen, it's interesting to think what happened to this version of the second Doctor after. This second Doctor could have been present during the 6th Doctor's trial with the Valeyard, maybe even the Time War, or just locked away in darkness with zero awareness as to what was going on. Only the Doctor bi-generate. While it's now known that the Doctor can bi-generate, it'll be interesting to know if this is only exclusive to them, or if all Time Lords have this ability. The Master, for instance, would be a fascinating example of this. Since Doctor Who's reboot, the Master's timeline has been a little muddled, with no confirmation as to the exact order in which the Saxon Master, John Sim, Missy, Michelle Gomes, and the Spy Master, Sacha Dhawan, came. While Doctor Who audio plays, comics, and prose have often filled in gaps within the canon, this isn't always set in stone, and the TV canon has often overturned previously established details. John Sim notably returned to the show in the season 10 final episodes, World Enough and Time, and The Doctor Falls, opposite Missy. While the two didn't recognize one another, the Master has always had a complicated mind, so perhaps the Saxon Master and Missy are a product of bi-generation. In fact, one moment in this story saw Missy eventually be able to recall a time when she remembered, as the Saxon Master, a woman pushing them against a wall and insisting they always carry a spare dematerialization circuit, which could suggest that in a complex, timey-wimey way, the Master was setting up their own future. 2. Why doesn't the Doctor remember previous bi-generations? If every incarnation of the Doctor has bi-generated, as implied by Russell T Davies, then the Time Lord forgetting this happening needs to be addressed. Of course, no Doctor would have made a reference to bi-generation in any episode previous to The Giggle, as the concept hadn't been introduced, but an explanation for this will need to be given. It's known that the Doctor's memory of interacting with themselves can be a little blurred. A great example of this is in the 50th anniversary special, The Day of the Doctor, when the 10th and 11th Doctors cross paths with the War Doctor, John Hurt, and initially struggle to remember ever being him. 1. How does bi-generation affect the Time Lord's 12 regeneration limit? One Doctor Who detail that cemented the fate of the Time Lords could now possibly change with the introduction of bi-generation. Since the show's classic era, notably in the 1983 story Modern Undead and the 1996 Doctor Who movie, it has been made clear that a Time Lord can only regenerate 12 times, having a total of 13 incarnations altogether before dying permanently. This was reiterated in Matt Smith's final episode, The Time of the Doctor, although the Time Lords ended up gifting the Doctor a new cycle of regenerations, resulting in his regeneration into the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi. However, how bi-generation fits into this is unclear. If each incarnation of the Doctor is still out there in the TRDIS, perhaps the Doctor never completely regenerated. If they did, then that could imply that the Doctor actually reached their regeneration limit with Peter Davison's departure from the role, and every incarnation in Doctor Who from Colin Baker onwards was a new cycle. There's a chance that it's not that complicated, and even with the previous version still out there, the Doctor's regeneration number still remains the same, but it's still worth considering. If you like the video, don't forget to like, comment, and share.